initiatives that he has started. Thank you, Mr. President.
That will not be treated as an objection. So, there being no objection, motion is approved.
Mr. President, I move that we elect Senator Chis Escudero as Chairman of the Committee on Education.
Any objection? There being none, Senator Escudero is now the new Chairman of the Committee on Education. Majority Leader?
Mr. President, I move that we proceed with the reference of business.
Any objection? Senator Aquino?
Mr. President, thank you for allowing me a few minutes of your time. Alam mo, Mr. President, lahat naman tayo dito, mga politiko. Lahat naman tayo dito, mga big boys and big girls. And I take no offense to this removal of my chairmanship in education. But for the record, Mr. President, I would just like to state for the record, and I hope no one will object, that this move, Mr. President, has nothing to do with the performance of the Committee on Education. Two of the priority bills that we have filed and are currently discussing and hopefully will pass before the end of March, yung Pagkain Pinoy para sa Batang Pinoy Bill, and of course our Free Higher Education Act, Mr. President, has gone through numerous hearings, has gone through numerous consultations. We've put the time into these bills, Mr. President, and we will support Senator Escudero when he finalizes these bills and hopefully gets a second and third reading, Mr. President, here on the Senate floor. Mr. President, never in my 4 years as a senator have I seen support for this bill. Support as much for these two bills. Mr. President, yung Free Education Act, I think there were already 11 or 12 co-sponsors. There were a number of co-authors. Yung Pagkain Pinoy, Mr. President, also had a similar number of support from our colleagues. So for the record, Mr. President, let me just say that it was a pleasure being your Committee on Education Chairman. And Mr. President, if this is the price to pay to show up on the streets of EDSA, talking about democracy, talking about the issues of violence on our streets, if this is the price to pay, Mr. President, I gladly pay that price. Maraming salamat, Mr. President.
Thank you for the manifestation. Let's go to the pending motion that we proceed with the reference of business. Any objection? Senator Pangilinan?
Just a clarification, Mr. President, before we proceed, we act on the motion. Considering that the former minority leader is now elected as Senate President pro tem, may we know who the minority leader, who will act as minority leader, Mr. President?
Senator Recto is recognized.
Just a manifestation and maybe to help answer the question. Mr. President, I accept the pro tem and I thank my colleagues, the majority of whom have voted me to the position of pro tem. Precisely knowing or finding out today what will happen, I thought it was best to accept the offer of the majority to be pro tem, to open up the position of minority leader to any of our colleagues who may be joining the minority. At this point in time, I suppose that the minority leader would be Senator Trillanes until the minority decides among themselves who would be the minority leader. Thank you.
Senator Pangilinan?
Mr. President, with that manifestation, I will place on record that I would like to associate myself with the members of the minority of this chamber.
Thank you. Senator Dilawan?
I adopt the manifestation of Senator Pangilinan, and therefore it is proper at this stage that we rearrange the seats in the chamber.
Thank you. Who else? Senator Aquino?
Mr. President, likewise, I manifest that I will also be joining the minority.
Were you raising your hand, Senator Tiveros? Yes, sir. Senator Tiveros?
Thank you, Mr. President. I also proudly joined the minority of the Senate today. Salamat po.
Thank you. Senator Pangilinan? Yes.
I took a few moments, Mr. President, hoping that perhaps other members of the chamber would also associate themselves and join the minority, but it looks like that's it, Mr. President. Having said that, Mr. President, we may be allowed perhaps a day or so to sit down with our colleagues in the minority to discuss, if at all, a reorganization or the matter of the issue of who the minority leader will be. and as such, make the necessary manifestations at the proper time, at a later time, Mr. President.
Is there any objection to proceed with the reference of business as of this moment? Senator Dilawan?
So, just to make the records clear, the members of the minority today will be Senator Trillanes, this representation, Senator Risa Hontiveros, Senator Bam Aquino, Senator Kiko Pangilinan. And of course, we speak also for in behalf of Senator Laila de Lima as a member of the minority.
I think it's better to await formal communication from the good senator.
Yes, yes.
Regarding that matter, sir.
Yes.
But that's correct, sir. As of this moment, there will be 5 members of the minority.
Okay. We have no dispute with that, Mr. President.
What's the pleasure of Senator Pangilinan?
Yes, Mr. President, with the inclusion of at least, well, prior to the reorganization, Mr. President, there were 3 members of the minority. After the reorganization, Mr. President, there are now 5. This will therefore affect the entire proportionate representation in all the committees. May we know how we are to proceed, given the change in the proportionate representation of all committees, Mr. President?
Majority Leader? Yes. Can we answer that question later because we have a pending motion to proceed with the reference of business? Any objection? There being none, the motion is approved. Secretary, let us proceed with the reference of business.
Reference of business. Message of the President of the Philippines. Letter of President Rodrigo Roa Duterte dated 15 February 2017, submitting to the Senate's consideration the agreement between the Government of the Republic of the Philippines and the Government of the Republic of Indonesia concerning the delimitation of the exclusive economic zone boundary, which was signed on 23rd May 2014 in Manila, Philippines.
Referred to the Committee on Foreign Relations.
Bills on first reading. 1349, an act naming the intersection of Jose Abad Santos Avenue, Gapan, San Fernando, Olongapo Road, and the Guagua, Florida Blanca Provincial Road, located at the border of Barangay San Antonio and Barangay Jose Abad Santos, both in the municipality of Guagua, province of Pampanga, as the William Gulanco Junction. Senator Maria Lourdes Nancy Binay.
To the Committee on Public Works.
1350, an act officially creating Barangay Ascomo, Municipality of Guagua, Province of Pampanga, into a barangay for other purposes. Senator Maria Lourdes Nancy Binay.
To the Committee on Rules.
1351, an act regulating the establishment and implementation of agribusiness ventures arrangements in agrarian reform lands. Senator Risa Hontiveros.
To the Committee on Agrarian Reform.
Resolutions, number 301, resolution directing the Committee on Public Services as part of its oversight function to conduct an inquiry on the reported bus accident that tragically claimed the lives of 15 passengers, mostly students, from Bestlink College of the Philippines, and to review existing laws and policies with regard to ensuring the roadworthiness of public utility vehicles and the competence of drivers of such vehicles. Senator Grace Poe.
To the Committee on Public Services.
302, resolution directing the Senate Committee on Foreign Relations to investigate, in aid of legislation, the status of the Manila Economic and Cultural Office, the country's representative office in Taiwan, in order to prevent possible violations of the One China policy. Senator Aquilino Coco Pimentel III.
To the Committee on Foreign Relations.
Committee reports. Committee Report Number 37, submitted jointly by the Committees on Civil Service, Government Reorganization and Professional Regulation and Finance, on Senate Bill Number 286, introduced by Senator Trillanes IV, entitled An Act Providing for a Cost of Living Allowance for all officials and employees of the government sector and for other related purposes, recommending its approval with amendment, Senator Trillanes IV.
To the calendar for ordinary business.
Committee Report Number 38, submitted jointly by the Committees on Civil Service, Government Reorganization and Professional Regulation and Finance, on Senate Bill Number 453, introduced by Senator Trillanes IV, entitled An Act Granting Survivorship Benefits to the surviving legitimate spouse of a deceased retired member of the Office of Solicitor General, recommending its approval with amendments, Senator Trillanes IV.
To the calendar for ordinary business.
Committee Report Number 39, submitted jointly by the Committees on Civil Service, Government Reorganization and Professional Regulation and Finance, on Senate Bill Number 807, introduced by Senator Trillanes IV, entitled An Act Increasing to 3,000 pesos the monthly personnel economic relief allowance granted to government employees, appropriating funds therefore and for other purposes, recommending its approval without amendment, Senator Trillanes IV.
To the calendar for ordinary business. Majority Leader.
Mr. President, with the permission of the Chamber, earlier, Senator Francis Pangilinan has withdrawn the availment of the privilege hour. So I move to resume consideration of Senate Bill 1256 under Committee Report Number 13.
Is there any objection? There being none, we resume consideration of Senate Bill Number 1256 under Committee Report Number 13.
Mr. President, this is the measure further amending the Anti-Money Laundering Act. Parliamentary status of the measure is that we are still in the period of interpellation. So I move to recognize the Chairman of the Committee on Banks, Currencies and Financial Institutions, Senator Francis Escudero, and to interpellate Senator Franklin Drilon.
Can we have a minute suspension as
Yes,
the
move to suspend the session for a few minutes, Mr. President.
session is suspended?